So with 4.2 first half and the reruns of Castorice, the Dahlia, and Firefly being just about half a day away, I want to make the usual should you or should you not summon for them. In this video, we're going to be talking about each character, going over their spot in the meta over the time since of their release, and then if you should or should not summon for each of them. Stuck grinding in Honkai Star Rail? Need stellar jades fast? We've got you covered. Head over to U7 Buy, your ultimate gaming hub for save it fast and cheap in-game top-ups. Whether it's Star Rail or your other favorite games, U7 delivers instantly and players love it. Check out their Trustpilot reviews, they're actually top ranked. On the Honkai Star Rail direct top-up page, you can recharge your account in seconds. For example, 8080 Honorific shards cost $99.99 in the official store. However, on U7 Buy, you can see the price is cheaper. When you head over to U7 Buy, you might notice that the storefront display prices currently match the in-game store, but don't worry, the magic happens at checkout. Once you click the buy now button, your total instantly drops to our actual discounted price only. Just pick your server, enter UID, pay securely, and boom, your account is instantly loaded. Want extra savings? Use code PRETSR at checkout for 5% off, perfect for last minute pulls, battle passes, or surprising a friend. And here's a bonus. If you spend $80 a month on U7 Buy, you can grab the Honkai Star Rail Express Pass for only 1 cent, which is nearly free. Click on the link in my description, recharge fast, save more, and keep blazing those trails. Starting it off with Castorice. So Castorice has still held up to be a part of the best team in the game, being Mono Remembrance. Since her release, she was overall strong, then she got Hyacinth, which really set her apart to the next level, and she received 2 more upgrades after that. She got Evernight, which really made the team the best pretty much, and if that wasn't already enough, it was already performing the best with Trippy. They added Cyrene on top of that, which did just bring them to a different level. To this day, she is performing super good. The only downside about her team, which has kind of remained true throughout the entirety, is the fact that it does have a bit of a higher cost entry, since with Remembrance there's not many free-to-play Lycone alternatives or just Lycone alternatives in general. Usually with them, especially Evernight and Castorice, you mainly want to have their signatures or at most an S5 BP Lycone. With Hyacinth, you really want her signature on that team, especially for the extra Dane plus the damage it does provide. Cyrene, thankfully for her Lycone, it's not as valuable, and usually for either her or Hyacinth you have the Herder Shop one, but you can tell it has relatively a higher cost entry, and also for the fact that these characters all have insane vertical investment. Castorice E1 is very solid, her E2 is insane, Evernight has broken E1, E2, Hyacinth E1 is insane, her E2 is very good, Cyrene E1 is very good for her own damage, and E2 fixes her only problem. I'm kind of talking about Mono Remembrance as a whole here because that's kind of just what you associate Castorice with, as that is kind of the team that has dominated the meta and still, even after the Elation stuff, performs the best at their cost requirement. I know at lower cost they do get beat out by a lot of like the low cost clears like Asheville and Noxa, because Castorice isn't really built like that. She's built to have her entire team around her, and that's what really puts her apart. That has remained true since she did release. Well, less so when she did release back in 3.2 because there was just more options and she didn't necessarily have the team opportunity besides like RMC, Tribby, and then any healer that you had that was available like Luotra or Gallagher or whatever. Then as more of the team released and the game got harder because of it, the cost entry for the team has just gone up and up and up. So while a team still can do good with like the bare minimum, usually you're looking at like 6 to 8 cost per entry for it to be like the really strong team that it's known to be. So yeah, that is the biggest difference from release to now. She has consistently been top tier. Like again, in the release, she wasn't like the best. She was very in line with 3.x, but then Hyacinth is what set her apart to be the best, and then she just got more upgrades in the form of Evernight and then Cyrene. And with that, to this day, she is just insanely strong. Now looking at the Dahlia. So the Dahlia hasn't been out for too long. She released in 3.8, which was just 3 updates ago as of this update. And she, in her role, has still just done everything she wants to do. She is the Kafka of Break. She is the reason the entire archetype even made a comeback. Her kit is so insanely loaded that it revived a dead archetype. Previously, before the Dahlia, you needed very, very high investment for the team to even function. Then you can probably get like the same results for like a 3.x team with like half the cost. She brought weakness break efficiency for the team, which was really good, especially since Ruan Mei was kind of getting her spot replaced. And especially the ability to be able to proc super break when enemies aren't weakness broken. So you don't have to fully wait for them to be weakness broken. Like you still want to break them because when you break them, that's when you get the whole big proc. But being able to actually do damage outside of when they are broken was very, very big. Of course, having her super break conversion, her follow-up attack, her skill, and her ultimate all being attacks with good toughness and also contributing to a good amount of damage has also been very helpful. And specifically for the two that are able to implant a weakness, so Bootil and Firefly, they were able to get a big speed increase thanks to her trace. Unfortunately, the third break DPS being Rappa doesn't get as much of a benefit, but still the Dahlia is literally in all three of these characters' teams. Anything you want to do break related, the Dahlia has to be on there for it to really function. So yeah, since she did release, she revived the archetype and she has kept it afloat to as it is now. You still need like relatively good investment, but not as much as you did previously to make it work because the Dahlia is just that loaded. Weakness break efficiency, being able to convert to super break damage when enemies are not weakness broken, also able to defense shred the field by 18%, having her own attacks and damage contribution, also some opportunity to recover some skill points, and at the same time having insane vertical investment. Her S1 is very good, her E1 is insane, her E2 is insane. So when you ever decided to pick her up at base, that's like the base requirement, of course. And then if you picked up her E1, if you picked up her S1, if you picked up her E2 especially, you just had a unit that was already reviving an archetype at E0, S0 and making it that much stronger. So you can imagine how strong a more invested in the Dahlia is. So since it released 3 patches ago to now, she is kept afloat as the Kafka of a break. Now for Firefly, so this is a lot easier to talk about. She was the quote-unquote best break DPS from her release. Later on, once we got to around Fugue, because she did get the lesser extent of Fugue's kit as opposed to Rappa and Bootil who got bigger upgrades. Honestly, without E2, Firefly did become, in my opinion, the worst of the 3. Which isn't really saying much. None of them were really that great. Bootil was only the one that had like crazy potential. Rappa and Firefly were relatively like whatever. At least Firefly did have her E2 to make her do good. So if you did have a good invested in team before the Dahlia, with E2 Firefly, you still did do good. And then if you had crazy setups with Bootil, Eagle, Action Advance, and you were just a good player overall, you were still able to make them clear. Rappa, unfortunately, didn't have too much of that. But yeah, Firefly now, especially after the Dahlia, she gets the biggest buff from the Dahlia and she becomes the best of the 3 again. And on top of that, in this update, she's getting a 4.2 Nova Flare. The Nova Flare gives her more super break conversion on her kit. Previously in her trace, she was able to convert up to 50% super break damage. Now it is 150%. Another one of her traces is able to delay the actual countdown of complete combustion, so she's in the state for longer. She's also able to implant fire weakness on all 3 targets rather than the primary one as well. The whole goal of this was to kind of make her less reliant on the Dahlia, but it didn't change anything. Break is just way too reliant on that character. So even after the buffs, while she is more usable outside of it, just to make her actually function properly, you still want the Dahlia. So these kind of characters are shipped together when I'm gonna be talking about this, because there's still just in no world you would pull for break without having the Dahlia. But yeah, Firefly has gotten the biggest buff from the Dahlia, and now she's getting an actual buff to her kit, which makes her further the best, but still really wants the Dahlia. So from her release, she just hasn't held up as much, especially because just break was dying. Then the Dahlia release, she was really good, and she still does really want her E2, to be honest. Like, again, you can very much perform without it with just like E1 or less, but her E2 is just so big, especially now that it doesn't have a requirement with the buff. So I still do highly recommend E2 for people that want Firefly. But yeah, her spot is a lot better as it was previously before the Dahlia, and with the buffs, she is even stronger, and she's going to be performing very well. Now, reasons that you should or should not summon for Castorice. If you want to summon for her, I definitely recommend it if you already have some of her team ready. So if you have Evernight, Cyrene, or Hyacine, especially mainly Hyacine, that character is non-negotiable with Castorice. Having no Hyacine is just insane. No matter the investment, it's just an actual incredible difference that Hyacine does for that character. That is going to be the con. If you do have Hyacine, Castorice would be that much more of a beneficial DPS. And then if you also happen to have Evernight and or Cyrene, then you can have majority of the team just there, and then you can wait for the rerun for the one you don't have, and boom, you have a very, very, very strong team that will clear for probably a lot more time to come. And also, if you are in need of a DPS, that is always the biggest thing when it comes to these DPSs, and that is if you yourself needs a DPS. Then, of course, she's going to be a great pick, but you just have to be willing to get her team. Evernight and Hyacine did just rerun not too long ago, so you would have to wait potentially a little bit for them if you don't have them. But if you are willing to pull the team, you'd get Castorice, and Cyrene is probably going to rerun in like an update or 2 from this one, so that would be another one. But you just have to very much be willing to pull, especially Hyacine, but just the entire team, because that's where the potential really lies. If you're willing to do that and you're in more need of a DPS, Castorice is a fantastic pick to do a lot. Reasons why you should shouldn't summon would be the opposite. If you don't have a combination or you're not willing to pull them, especially Hyacinth, like I cannot stress this enough. If you don't want to pull Hyacinth at all, I do not recommend pulling Castorice. It's insane of how much of a difference that character makes. So if you don't have a combination or you're just not willing to do it, or you're just not also in need of a DPS, in that case, I would not recommend Castorice. It's really that simple. Now, reasons to summon or skip for the Dahlia. If you have any combination of wanting to use a break on your account, like maybe you have some of them, like you have an older team like Fugue, Bootail, or you have some combination like you have Firefly, Rappa, so on, whatever the combination. If you want to do anything break related, you want to pull the Dahlia. Ease or S0, if you're able to go higher than that, of course, better, but just having her is the biggest difference you can do on that team. She is a non-negotiable teammate. That's why I keep saying the Kafka of break. She is so crucial to that team. So that's really it. If you want to do anything with break, then pull the Dahlia. That's how simple it is. And then you can imagine the reason not to summon would be if you don't want to do anything with break. So if you don't have a combination or you just want to ignore it, you don't want to do anything with break, then you don't need the Dahlia on your account. That's really it. And then for Firefly, this character, the biggest condition would be if you are willing to get the Dahlia if you don't already have her or you already have her. In that case, then Firefly would be the best break DPS you can pick up with the Dahlia. And also if you're in need of a DPS in that case, but if you already have the Dahlia and you're not in too much need of a DPS, unless you already have a full break team set up for a different break character, so Bootail or Rappa, in that case, getting Firefly for your account just so you can use with the Dahlia is going to perform very nice. Pre-E2 Firefly, especially after like all the buffs and Dahlia release, still does do well. You still really want to aim for that E2 just because of how insane it is, but you can definitely survive for a decent chunk longer without it. And reasons to not get her would be, of course, if you don't have the Dahlia or you're not willing to pull her. Same reasons for her actual section is just insane. That character is a non-negotiable teammate anytime you're considering break. So if you don't have the Dahlia, you're not willing to pull her, then don't bother. Another reason would be if you already have the Dahlia considered into a different spot, so a different break DPS, as I mentioned multiple times though, Bootail, Rappa. If you already have that set up, you don't really want to pull them away, especially if you use them actively because their performance will drop off significantly. So in that case, you would mainly just stick the Dahlia on that team, and if you just pulled Firefly and she didn't really have many teammates, she would also perform not that great. And then the reason of not really needing a DPS, so if you were considering pulling the Dahlia and Firefly, but you don't have too much need of a DPS, you're better off using those pulls elsewhere. And that is it for the should you or should you not summon for the 4.2 first half rerun characters. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for future videos like this along with all other types of content. And I'll see you later. Peace out.